April 30th, 2013. The servers at Dat.Piff buckle under a sudden massive surge in global traffic. A 20-year-old independent artist from Chicago has just broken the internet's premier mixtape distributor. There is no major label public relations machine backing this release. There is no physical compact disc shipped to big box retailers. There is only a digital zip file titled Acid Rap, and it is moving faster than the bandwidth can possibly handle. In corporate boardrooms across New York and Los Angeles, A&R executives stare at the back-end analytics in absolute disbelief. The traditional music industry operates on a strict, predictable pipeline. A label fronts the capital, controls the distribution channels, and owns the master rights in perpetuity. But this release bypasses the entire toll booth, routing a finished, commercially viable product directly to millions of listeners for exactly $0. For decades, the primary barrier to entry in the music business was physical distribution. Getting plastic discs onto store shelves required a sprawling logistics network, fleets of trucks, and immense corporate capital. Record labels weaponized this infrastructure to lock artists into predatory contracts. The standard deal offered a modest cash advance in exchange for an 80% cut of all future royalties, plus complete ownership of the underlying copyrights. Chance the Rapper looked at that legacy blueprint and threw it away. Instead of treating free streaming platforms like SoundCloud as mere promotional tools, he treated them as his primary point of sale. By giving away the music, he eliminated the need for a retail distributor entirely. He retained 100% of his publishing, his master recordings, and his total creative control. The immediate consequence of this strategy was a massive, highly engaged audience that owed absolutely nothing to the traditional radio gatekeepers. The numbers on Acid Rap skyrocketed into the millions within weeks, generating a level of cultural capital that money simply could not buy. Major labels panicked, dispatching talent scouts to Chicago with blank checks, desperate to acquire the asset before this independent distribution model caught on. The offers on the table were staggering. Executives dangled multi-million-dollar advances, promising global marketing campaigns and prime radio placement. But the fine print always demanded the exact same sacrifice. To take the money meant surrendering the master rights and stepping into the endless cycle of recoupment, where the artist effectively pays back the label's investment out of their own meager royalty split. Refusing those checks required a terrifying level of conviction. Building a career under the quiet money blueprint meant funding every studio session, every music video, and every tour bus entirely out of pocket. If a single went nowhere, there was no corporate safety net to absorb the financial loss. The artist had to operate as a fully functioning enterprise, managing cash flow while simultaneously driving the creative vision. The operational reality of independent touring was grueling. Without major label tour support, routing a national run meant fronting the massive capital for venue deposits, stage design, and crew salaries. Every dollar generated from ticket sales and merchandise had to be meticulously reinvested into the operation. The margins were razor thin at first, but the revenue belonged entirely to the artist's LLC, not a multinational conglomerate. This direct-to-consumer pipeline fundamentally transformed the economics of independent hip-hop on a systemic level. Because the artist owned the master recordings outright, a single synchronization license for a television commercial, a video game, or a film soundtrack yielded a massive, unsplit payday that went directly into the company accounts. The live show became the primary high-margin revenue engine, fueled by thousands of fans who discovered the music through frictionless, free streaming distribution rather than expensive radio campaigns. Yet, despite the undeniable commercial impact and massive touring revenue, the institutional music industry refused to acknowledge the shift. The ultimate symbol of legitimacy in the music business remained the Grammy Award, but the Recording Academy maintained archaic eligibility rules explicitly designed to protect the major label ecosystem and preserve their monopoly on prestige. According to the established guidelines, an album was only eligible for a Grammy if it was commercially available for retail sale. It had to possess a barcode and a price tag. Mixtapes, free releases, and streaming-only projects were strictly disqualified, regardless of their cultural footprint or critical acclaim. The institution effectively walled off independent streaming artists from the industry's highest honor. This barrier was not just a matter of prestige, it was a structural mechanism of financial control. Winning a Grammy triggers a quantifiable spike in booking fees, catalog valuation, and brand leverage. By denying eligibility to free streaming projects, the Academy forced ambitious artists back toward the traditional retail distribution model, effectively driving them back into the arms of the major labels. The independent sector decided to break that wall down. In early 2016, a highly coordinated public pressure campaign was launched, aimed directly at the Recording Academy. The strategy weaponized a massive independent fan base, circulating petitions and demanding that the institution recognize streaming platforms as legitimate vehicles for commercial music distribution. The timing of this aggressive push was impeccable. The broader music industry was simultaneously undergoing a massive, painful transition as physical album sales plummeted and subscription streaming services began to absolutely dominate global revenue charts. The Academy's rigid, unyielding insistence on physical retail distribution was rapidly becoming an embarrassing anachronism that threatened to render the awards culturally irrelevant to a new generation of music consumers. Under mounting public pressure and the undeniable reality of market trends, the Recording Academy finally broke. In June 2016, they announced a historic revision to their eligibility rules. For the first time, recordings released solely through applicable streaming services would be eligible for Grammy consideration, completely removing the requirement for commercial retail sale. The rule change perfectly coincided with the release of a third major project, Coloring Book. But the financial mechanics behind this release were vastly more sophisticated than the DatPiff days. The independent streaming strategy had evolved from giving music away for free to leveraging platform wars for massive, upfront capital injections without sacrificing ownership. Instead of signing a traditional record deal, the team negotiated a highly lucrative short-term exclusivity window with Apple Music. Apple paid a reported $500,000 for the right to host the project exclusively on their platform for 2 weeks. It was a masterstroke of independent leverage, turning corporate competition into immediate funding. That $500,000 payment functioned exactly like a major label advance, providing the necessary capital to fund an extravagant stadium-level rollout. But unlike a label advance, it required zero surrender of copyright. After 14 days, the exclusivity window expired, and the project was immediately distributed across all competing platforms, including SoundCloud and Spotify. The results of this hybrid distribution model were unprecedented. The project debuted at number 8 on the Billboard 200 chart, generating over 57.3 million streams in its first week. It became the first release in history to chart on the Billboard 200 based entirely on streaming equivalents, without a single physical or digital album sale. The climax of this multi-year campaign arrived at the 2017 Grammy Awards. The project won Best Rap Album, defeating major label titans who had spent millions on traditional promotional campaigns. The visual of an unsigned artist, completely independent of the traditional distribution machine, accepting the industry's highest honor, fundamentally shattered the myth that major label backing was a prerequisite for mainstream dominance. This victory sent shockwaves through the executive suites of the major music groups. The leverage dynamic had permanently shifted. If an artist could utilize independent streaming distribution to achieve #1 chart positions, stadium tours, and Grammy Awards, the traditional 80-20 record deal suddenly looked like a terrible investment for the creator. Labels were forced to adapt their entire business model. To attract emerging talent who now possessed the tools to build their own audiences, executives had to offer joint ventures, profit-sharing agreements, and distribution-only deals. The era of demanding master rights in exchange for basic market access was rapidly coming to a close. However, the quiet money blueprint is not a simple cheat code that guarantees wealth without labor. Managing an independent empire at this scale requires an immense, highly capable back-office infrastructure. The artist must employ dedicated legal teams to clear complex samples, sophisticated accounting firms to track digital micropennies across dozens of global territories, and aggressive marketing teams to secure prime playlist placements in a hyper-competitive algorithmic landscape. The true cost of independence is the sheer weight of operational overhead. Every missed opportunity, every logistical failure, and every over-budget production falls squarely on the artist's balance sheet. There is no corporate parent to absorb a disastrous tour or a poorly performing merchandise drop. The risk is absolute, but so is the potential for generational wealth. By treating the recorded music as an acquisition tool and the brand as the primary asset, this strategy redefined what it meant to be a successful musician in the digital age. The power was no longer held by the entities that pressed the vinyl or shipped the compact discs. The power was held by whoever controlled the direct relationship with the listener. The legacy of this independent streaming strategy extends far beyond a single artist or a handful of golden trophies. It provided a concrete, actionable blueprint for a new generation of creators. It proved that the machinery of the music industry could be bypassed, its rules could be rewritten, and its highest honors could be claimed without ever selling the rights to your own voice.